877-446. You are welcome to call me if there is some problem that you have. Come to me. I'll be glad to run it down and make sure that we're all on the same page, because we have a lot of work to do over the next few years. So I'm going to turn it over to those who are in the details and in the weeds on this. So who gets it next?
It's coming to me. And so I want to say welcome to everybody. And as you kind of signed in, you may have noticed everyone's line is muted. And so we encourage you to, if you have any questions as we're moving through this, to please put them in the chat. And then if we have time at the end, we'll answer those. And want to relay what Sally was saying and say congratulations, and also let people know that to remind people that we expect status updates. So this is the first 14 projects to be awarded. And so if you have another application pending, those are going to be reviewed on a rolling basis. So be prepared that, in the not too distant future, you may have an invite to another call just like this one. And so over the next month, Beam will work with each of your organizations to complete 2 activities. The first activity we're calling a data refresh, because it's been quite a few months since we first, asked everybody to fill out their applications. And the second one is about the milestones and grant acceptance. And in just a few minutes, Clay Woolley from Ready will walk you through those activities. But the data refresh is exactly what it sounds like. Information provided in your original application, likely the areas that were descoped or removed during the application curing process. Therefore, data on the high-level design, bill of materials, project budget, and community engagement tabs will need to be updated or refreshed to reflect the approved project. So beginning on Friday, that's this Friday, May 24th, the portal will open for 1 week for you to update those portions. All refreshed data should be entered by the close of business May 31st. Once again, it's going to open this Friday, the 24th, and it's going to close the 31st. Then the following week, June 3rd through 7th, Beam will review your submissions and either approve the updates or contact you to refine the responses. We know, I know quite a few of you are actually on vacation taking this call, and conference season's around the corner, and people, people are in and out of the office. And so just please make sure somebody in your organization is cognizant of these deadlines and to make sure that they get uploaded in time. And so the second activity, which will begin after Beam accepts the data refresh, is your milestones and grant acceptance. As you know, CPF is a fixed amount subaward that provides reimbursements at specific times and periodic intervals. You as an awardee will decide what those milestones are and what they should be used for each project, and assign a dollar amount for reimbursement to each milestone. Our partners from Horn will describe this in more detail in just a few minutes. And also, one thing that you will note is in everyone's award, it was rounded. We've learned over quite some time to round. So everyone's award is rounded to the nearest $10. And so when you're updating your budget, please be kind of cognizant of that, of being sure to round to the nearest $10. And so upon acceptance from Beam, and the grant agreement will be, once we agree on all the milestones and the data refresh, then the final grant agreement will be generated, because the milestones are part of that final grant agreement. And while you're updating the high-level design and other tabs, your organization may identify locations that you will pass and serve as the result of your CPF award. While Beam is not providing additional funding for those locations, we are preparing for the BEAD challenge process, and we would like to offer you the opportunity to declare these locations as planned service. And so Beam will provide a template for reporting those locations to our office. The template will need to be returned the same time as your signed grant agreement, and it will be part of your grant agreement paperwork. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Mason from Horn, who I believe most of y'all have been on the receiving end of emails and phone calls from. So I'm going to turn it over to him now.
Yeah, so like Kyle said, my name is Mason Aaron. I'm a compliance manager here at Horn, and I work primarily on what we call the Horn Beam team. We help them with their federal grants and program administration. I work a little bit on the BIP project as well, but primarily my focus is Capital Projects Fund. I also have Kyle Skeen on the call as well. He is another one of our compliance senior managers, and then we also have Lindsay Howard, who touches pretty much all the grants here with Beam, but probably primarily focuses on the BEAD grant. So just a little introduction there. So kind of piggybacking on what Kyle talked about, I was going to give a little bit of a background. Most of y'all probably have heard this spill from me or have read up on the guidance, but talking a little bit about the difference between traditional subawards and fixed amount subawards. This is kind of new to projects of this size and magnitude. So just to give a little background there. In May of 2023, Treasury released the SLFRF and CPF supplementary broadband guidance. This guidance is related to all broadband infrastructure projects that are funded with the ARPA state and local fiscal recovery fund dollars, as well as the broadband infrastructure projects funded with CPF funds. Within this guidance, Treasury got the approval of the Office of Management and Budget and waived some of the requirements that are traditionally present for fixed amount subawards. So typically, fixed amount subawards could only be awarded up to $250,000, and you had to obtain prior approval of the federal awarding agency. So in this case, it would be Treasury. But Treasury went ahead and got that approval from Office of Management and Budget for the entirety of Capital Projects Fund. And they issued this guidance also relieving some of those traditional constraints for fixed amount subawards and some of the actual regulations such as federal procurement regulations, cost principles, and program income, which we're going to go into in a little bit more detail. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of a background there because you're going to hear us talk about fixed amount subawards. You're going to see that language in a lot of your reporting and in your grant agreement. It's not going to say just subaward. It'll speak to fixed amount subawards. So when you see that language, just know that that's kind of the background of that. So going into the different requirements that were waived, federal procurement, cost principles, and program income, starting with federal procurement, the Horn team will be monitoring the expenditures that have been incurred and submitted for reimbursement. With federal procurement being waived, we're not necessarily going to be worried about where and how you purchased your items and materials and equipment and services and so forth that you utilize in the project. So that being said, ISPs are going to be able to utilize any and all pre-existing vendor and contractor relationships that they already have set in stone to fulfill those needed resources that are necessary to carry out their project. But like I said, we're still going to be reviewing the cost documentation that supports those costs that have been incurred to complete the project. So whether your entity is purchasing materials or services or whatever it may be for this project on an as needed basis, or you're utilizing some of your already on hand materials and equipment to complete this project, we're still going to be working with y'all to obtain that cost and payment documentation for every dollar that's spent in each of those milestones that we're going to discuss later. And the reason for this is it's our job with Beam to protect the state of Mississippi and ensuring that every dollar is spent in a compliant manner and to make sure that these projects progress to completion to fulfill the goal of the award. And then additionally on that, CPF does have a match requirement component. So we're also going to be making sure that whatever that agreed upon match amount is to meet the percentage match that was applied for and approved by Beam is actually fulfilled by the ISPs. And we can check that box as an application requirement that you complied with. And I wanted to take a second to speak specifically on that cost documentation and just bring up the fact that anything that's submitted to us is protected by law under the BEAM Act. And that specific code is the Mississippi Code, section 77-1915, for your reference. The other one, so I talked a little bit there about procurement and also cost principles. The cost principles part was talking about, obtaining that documentation and still reviewing it to make sure that it's spent in a compliant manner. But that third piece, program income, in that supplementary broadband guidance, Treasury has also waived that the program income requirements. So any income that your entity generates related to this project can be retained by your entity without having to report it back to BEAM. So there's not going to be any further monitoring or tracking of any income received by your entity for this project. It's unlike any other federal grant that I'm aware of or that I've ever worked on where program income on your award has to be tracked and reported and then either returned to the recipient to return back to the federal awarding agency or spent on additional eligible costs for your project. So I know my team is very thankful that Treasury was able to get that the program income requirement waived. And so kind of just finishing up on the background of fixed amount subawards in this guidance, really, I believe that the Fed's intentions here were to waive these requirements in an effort to relieve some of that administrative burden that it would be on ISPs and subrecipients throughout the nation, because they know that these pre-existing vendor and contractor relationships are out there. They know people are able to get materials and equipment and things in a more timely and cost-effective way, rather than going out and establishing new contracts under the federal procurement regulations. And so it's really a good thing for us and y'all. It's like I said, it's a timely and costly effective way for your entities to carry out these projects with minimal obstacles and keeping the highest chance of success. So moving into that payment, the disbursement methods like Kyle Brown was talking about with milestones, traditionally, regular subawards, costs are submitted for reimbursement at the subrecipient's request, typically no more than once per month. So the way we handle things normally is we allow subrecipients to submit a reimbursement request, but we usually hold them to one a month. And so each month they're able to submit a reimbursement request for costs incurred. We'll review that, and then a reimbursement will be paid to them for those costs. However, like we said in fixed amount subawards, these are handled on a milestone basis. And so along with the data curing of your application that's going to come over the next couple of days, we're also going to be asking you all to go in and what the feds call negotiate your milestones and the amounts that you apply to those milestones. Over the last couple of months, our team and BEAM and the engineers have worked to come up with a predefined listing of all possible milestones that an ISP might run into or accomplish during a build out of broadband infrastructure project. Some of these milestones are very high level. Some of these are a lower, more granular level. And with that being said, also some of these milestones are required, while other milestones might be a more intermediary milestone that, it may not be required, but it is in there and you're allowed to select it so that you can meet that milestone and capture some of those costs for reimbursement. So for instance, 100% of your construction being completed is obviously going to be a required milestone because every project is eventually going to reach 100% completion. But 10% of construction completion might be an optional milestone, but your entity may not want to select that one and capture those costs yet. You may want to wait till the 25% mark or the 50% mark. So that's really up to your discretion on those intermediary optional milestones, but those required ones will be marked in the portal for you. You'll know which ones are required, and you'll have to tag some level of or some amount of your award to that milestone so that we can verify that it was completed and reimburse you for it. And again, I just want to reiterate that reimbursements will be done on a milestone basis. So when you're thinking through and you're going through and completing your milestone schedule, if you want to go through and select only the required ones, that means you have to complete that milestone and provide that documentation to us showing that it was completed, as well as the cost that you incurred to complete it before you're reimbursed. So if you sign your grant agreement and your first milestone is 180 days away, you're looking at 6 months away from getting a reimbursement due to the fact that that's your first milestone in your milestone schedule. So just think through that as you're going through and clicking those milestones, whether optional or required, and coming up with a plan that fits best for your entity so that you can have the capital available to push this project to completion. And Clay is going to walk through a demo of both the data out or the data curing as well as the milestone and what that's going to look like in the portal in a second. But the last thing I wanted to touch on is reporting. Just real quick, we don't have anything to show on reporting in this call. It's going to be more focused on that data curing for the application as well as the milestones. But I just wanted to let y'all know that there is going to be some reporting requirements that are on a periodic basis. And we're going to be using those progress reports to track project progress and gather other useful information to meet BEAM's federal reporting requirements. So I believe, go ahead, Kyle.
I was going to say, Sally and I just wanted to clarify that you are the one setting the milestones.
That's
that
correct.
The milestone can be, preliminary engineering if you want that to be your milestone. That you're the person that's going to be setting your milestones, and you can make them, if it's something that's going to start fit and be completed within 15 days of you signing the grant agreement, you can put that as a milestone. That you're going to be the one that sets the milestone.
The awardee.
Yes.
The awardee will set the milestones.
That's right. And also on that point, KB, something you and I talked about yesterday, if you are filling out your milestone and there are costs that there's a milestone that you hit last month on this project, and it was, high level design, for example, and you have the high level design complete, any engineering certification or whatever that comes with that, and that's something that you want to capture costs for, just fill out that milestone and the date of estimated completion in there. Just put the date that it was completed in the cost documentation. And so upon execution of your agreement, you can go ahead and submit those completed milestone documents to us and show that, we filled out the milestone schedule saying that we were going to be done with this on April the 15th. Here's our documentation showing that it was completed on April 15th. And then we'll able to go ahead and start reimbursing those for those costs that have been incurred and the milestones that have been completed. So there's going to be, for some of those projects that might have already kicked off over the last couple of weeks or months, there might be some retroactive milestones that you want to fill out, but also those forward-looking milestones for into the future, all the way through project completion. And then the last little piece I had on reporting is just that I think we're going to be doing monthly progress reporting as well as once a quarter reporting. So the monthly progress is going to be more focused on project accomplishments and progress so that we can be up to speed on where your progress, where your project stands, what you've accomplished, any issues you've ran into, as well as, addresses on where you've built out as you complete areas. And then those quarterly reports will include some of that, but it'll be a lot more focused on the financial side, as BEAM will have a reporting duty to the feds on the financial side on a quarterly basis. So, and then the last thing on that is that the reporting function is also going to be available to you, to your entity in the portal, where you can begin and work through and submit that progress report within the portal for your project. That's all I got, KB.
I was actually expecting someone to have typed a message in the chat by now. but apparently we're doing a really good job. And so I guess, Clay, are you ready?
I'm ready. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, good deal. All right, so we're going to switch over and switch to this screen here, which hopefully everybody can see. Ace and KB?
Yep,
Yeah,
we're all good.
showing it.
I can
Good
see
deal.
it.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. I'm Clay Woolley from Ready.net. Work with the Beam and Horn teams here. And apologies, my camera's not on. It's not working this morning, but we should be okay. So first, just to start with an overview, as a reminder, to get into the portal, you're going to the same spot where you went to apply for the CPF fund. So apply.broadbandms.com. And if you have any issues when you log back in, so once this portion goes live, if you have any issues with the portal directly, you can send an email to the Beam help desk, or you can send it directly to us at mshelpdesk@ready.net. And then we're going to be covering the application data refresh today, as well as the grant agreement. And as we mentioned at the beginning of the call, if you have any questions, please put those in the chat box of this meeting, and we will get back to you at a later time. So first, we'll be covering application data refresh. And so these are for your provisional awards. So when you log into the portal, under Apply, you'll see Applications. And when the Beam office has scored your application and requested revisions, you will see this upon clicking on the Applications node. And it will tell you what it is that you need to update. So that's what you should see first. And so what you're looking for through your different project tabs, you're looking for one that says Provisional Award and Needs Revision. So for all of your projects, each individual application, all of them will need to be updated separately for the new data for the Beam team to review. So when you click into one of those applications, this view will look very familiar. It's what you filled out when you were doing your original application, and you will be able to click a button that says Start Revision. So at the top here, and maybe on my screen, can you all see the top there?
Yep.
Yeah. So all of the sections that require a revision, they will no longer have a green check mark. So the flow will guide you through it when you click Next, but we will need you to fill out all those sections that require some sort of revision. And those notes will be coming to you from the Beam office. So after you go through and you fill out all the different sections that require revision, you can click the three dots if your screen doesn't show it, and it'll take you to the Review and Submit page. Here you can look at everything that you've put together, review one final time, and then submit your cured application. When you click Submit Cured Application, it's going to take you to an attestation. You can read through those different options in the attestation, and you will need to certify that this information is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge, and then you can submit. And after you've submitted, you should get this notification on your screen. So this is notifying you that you have successfully cured your application, sent back to the Beam team for review. And if any further revisions are required, it's going to take you back to the same flow. So you'll see on your project, if an additional revision has been requested, it'll show up there on that same application again, and then you'll walk through these steps for wherever a revision is required until you get back to here. So that's it for the application data refresh. Very similar steps, very similar flow to when you were originally applying. So the next bit, Mason talked a lot about this earlier. We are now approaching the grant agreement. So this will be after your data has been refreshed, updated to reflect what was cured with the Beam office. And then now you're moving into defining your milestones and what it is that you're going to be reporting against. So when you first log back in, you'll see a new tab, which is for your grant agreements. And this is where your cured applications will show up. And you'll get a notification there that your cured project was accepted, and you can begin defining your milestones. So similar to the last screen, you'll see a need project agreement tag on your application, which means that it is open and ready for you to start defining your milestones. So here, this is when we're going to get into the different sections. Each of these will need to be defined and added, as Mason and Kyle covered earlier. So you'll click into each section and define those. And at the bottom, you'll notice there's a Gantt chart. So that's where we're tying in the funding and the dates. And so as you're clicking into the different options for each section, they will have different information that needs to be filled out depending upon what the milestone is and what the step is. So you'll see all of this once you get into the portal and can start clicking through. So as you fill it out, you'll notice that down at the bottom, your Gantt chart is going to populate. Your different milestones are going to populate with information, and at the top, your overview will update. So one thing that we did want to cover, part of, because these grants are a little bit different and they are location-based, so broadband serviceable location-based, you will need to define your network routes, which should be ported over from your application. And then we also added an optional component to this, so you are allowed to define more than one network route. So for instance, if you have two different project areas that aren't geographically close and you expect them to proceed at a different pace, you can actually define those as different network routes, so you can report independently on those milestones. So some milestones will encompass the entire project, others may be network route specific. So that is an option. You can do it all at once, or you can break it into different routes. And so this is showing a view of if you have defined specific routes. So notice the locations on the right are red, the locations on the left are yellow. Those yellow locations are a defined route, and so you will enter the relevant milestones and supporting information to support that network route, which will show up on the left. And at the bottom, you can see there are specific milestones tied to that defined network route. And finally here, you'll again have the opportunity to review all of the information in a condensed form and make sure that all of your information is accurate, complete. At the top will be who is responsible for keeping track of the milestones, reporting compliance from your organization, and then you can submit and review. And that concludes the demonstration portion. Thank you.
Thanks, Clay. And so we've had a couple of people drop some comments in the chat or some questions in the chat. And so kind of moving through those, since we do have a little bit of time left, is I'm going to share my other screen. And so to kind of answer Laura's question, that it is optional if you so choose. So I just kind of pulled up some locations, here on this map to where, we've got a lot of green dots that are shown as funded through CPF. But we've got some little, some BSLs that are kind of, out here, not showing as, planned service or funded. And so if your organization plans on funding those locations, even though they're not part of your CPF application, that's what these ancillary locations are going to be for. So if you do plan on serving, locations, across the street, we omitted an address. Yes, that's what these locations are for. And once again, it is optional. It is not required. If you want to have those shown as planned service, this is your chance to get those moved to planned service to help us with the BEAD challenge process. The second question about eligible project costs prior to the execution of the grant agreement, and Mason and Kyle, I believe that is correct. That if you go ahead and you're starting to procure fiber now for your project, if you're starting to do any of those, even though the grant agreement isn't executed, that those are allowable costs, correct?
That is correct. And also just to note that the start date period of performance for CPF is March 15th, 2021. So if any of those costs that you're wanting to capture that have already been incurred are prior to that, those will not be reimbursable.
And then the next question about the draft grant agreement and the dates in there, we will be sending around an updated, it will not be the final version, but I know some people have lengthy legal processes that people need to review. And so it will be a blank updated grant agreement that once we get all of your milestones and all of that information, then that will be filled in and a final grant agreement will be provided to you. And I believe we can probably send that this afternoon to everybody that's on kind of on the contact list. And so watch your inbox for that. Template for reimbursement requests. I believe that there is going to be a template.
That's correct.
And then the quarterly and monthly reporting through the portal, the answer is yes. But then there will also, so the treasury, when you actually pass and start connecting locations, that's going to be a spreadsheet that you're going to have to provide, but that will be uploaded into the portal. And then is there a deadline for execution of grant agreement? And I believe there is not.
There will be at some point. We just don't have that established yet.
But the sooner the better. How about that?
Sooner the better. Right.
And then Kelly had a question about marking stuff confidentially.
So, our position is the BEAM Act covers that. If you want to mark those as confidential, you certainly can. The BEAM Act then refers back to the Mississippi Public Records Law, and especially Section 2561(9) deals with information provided by third parties to a public entity, and that procedure that would happen if we did have a request for information that we deem as confidential, any proprietary information.
And then Pamela, yes, I believe we should be able to kick you that draft grant agreement, maybe even before lunch.
I think so.
Anybody else got any questions?
Okay, so the to-do list is, what is the to-do list for our awardees, Kyle?
So one is go ahead and start having your legal department review the draft grant agreement.
Yeah.
Okay. And then don't forget, starting on Friday, the portal will open for you to do a refresh of your data in your application. And that's, remember, May 31st is.
Can't we send everybody an email as a reminder?
We can do that.
We'll send you an email, which brings us to another issue. Make sure we have the right person, right contact in the email, that your contact is not on vacation. Set it up however you need to so we can get in touch with you.
Sally, you want to address Pamela's last question?
So this round of funding are for awards where there were no objections. So these were a bit easier to navigate. We do have another round of preliminary awards that have a minimal number of objections. We are working through that and investigating that, and think that perhaps those will be ready to go in a few weeks. Then we have some that have a larger amount of objections, and those are going to take us some time to finish up. So I don't know if that helps you any, but we will work through these that we have objections. That way we can get our number of what we are going to roll out in this first really overall round of funding. Then we will go back. We've got all of the projects scored. We're going to go back, start with that next highest score, and do a second round of funding under CPF to take up the remainder of the money that is left. So we've got to get this batch that we designated as preliminary determinations, we got to get them all handled first. Then we will get to the next batch.
Well, hearing no other questions, we'll get everybody a summary email out this afternoon, and also that draft grant agreement. So we appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you.
Hey, Clay.
Hi there. Oh man, my camera's still not working.
You're just like a white. Oh, hold on.
Again, it always makes me feel better when you have some sort of issue.
So, Sally, it's so funny. Even though I've been in this space a long time.